Hello, I'm Eija Metsälä, a principal lecturer, acting also as an editor-in-chief of Journal of Clinical Radiography and Radiotherapy. I'm going to share you an introduction about scientific and professional writing. How to proceed from an idea to an understandable professional or scientific text. What we are going to talk about during this lecture are issues to be considered before starting the actual writing process, what professional article is all about, structure of a scientific article, and some hints for authorships, and a bit of publishing process, especially from the viewpoint of scientific articles. It's pretty many-sided, and we're gonna inspect that, how that proceeds and what one should take into account. Before we start the actual writing process, we should consider the following factors. Why do we write? Do we write for reporting of the initiation of some project? Do we want to inform about some best practices? Or do we want to report, for example, of our study and study results? Or do we perhaps want to write just because we want to implement results received in some projects or studies to kind of spread the results further and trying to have an impact with those results on or achieve some change with those results? Or maybe we just want to write to market or advertise some innovation or product we have achieved in our project. So it's really important to consider why we really want to start this authoring process, and thereby also comes the question, who are or who is our audiences? Do we write for laymen or ordinary citizens, for example, in some magazines? Do we write professionals of some area like healthcare professionals, health tech professionals? Or do we perhaps write to scientific audiences, professors, teachers, researchers? All these audiences are accustomed to kind of speak and operate with a little bit different kind of language. The audiences also define the type or way of type of text or way of writing. Of course, based on also that the target journals will be different according to different audiences. And It also defines how we speak about certain issues, like do we expect certain terms to be understood by the readers, or do we need to explain all concepts more in detail? For example, if we write for ordinary citizens, we need to explain certain concepts much more in detail than if we write to the professionals or researchers of certain area. And a hint that I hope you remember forever after this, that always before starting an authoring or any writing process for a journal, especially, or for example, if you are publishing on some publication series, or even if it's gonna be some thesis or dissertation or whatever, read as a very first deed of your writing process author's instructions, because doing so you avoid lots of trouble from yourself later on. In those authoring instructions, there are layout guidelines, there are referencing guidelines, there are even there is even the structure of the article defined. And also one important thing is the amount of characters, especially in articles, what is allowed inside that publication. So one of the very first things, as you have selected the publication channel of your upcoming report or article, please read the author guidelines. Then an issue we already briefly went by is that we really need to consider also with whom are we writing, if we are writing in a group. Competence of the co-authors must be taken into account. What kind of how experienced they are on writing, and what can we expect from them. I would say that always take care that there is some senior, some person who has already published something, at least something in your group, the one that can supervise or guide you. Of course, if you are writing inside an educational institution in the frames of your studies, there is always your supervisors and teachers, professors to help you, because there are some issues, some tips and tricks and things that maybe this is a bit roughly said, but that you only learn by doing that authoring process. And even though you are now listening to this recording, and even though you might read some books, there always is something that you just don't figure out to say. So please at least choose at least some person into your authoring group who has experience on prior publications, and make clear work division in the very beginning of your authoring process, so that each in the group, each person in the group knows what is expected, and also I would say that make a clear timetable for different things to do, because that helps you a lot to achieve your outcome, and only take or such authors in the group that are really willing to commit on the authorship process. Order of writing an article. Or order of authorships, whose name comes first. There are actually scientific rules, ethical rules for that. Usually the first author is the one taking care of the structure and of the manuscripts, and authoring most, writing most to the manuscript, and the others in the order of amount of work they give to the article, and supervisor's place is the last one. There are ethical rules of who is entitled to be an author into a scientific article. If you have supervisors, academic supervisors like professors in your group, it is also always supervisors. Supervisors are entitled to be authors, because they kind of guide you and take care of the quality of your works, even though they would not write a word to the actual manuscript, but it's on their hands to supervise and take care of the quality. If the supervisor doesn't participate, the manuscript, so really give you good supervision for drafting the article, then he or she is not entitled. If that kinds of if the supervisor just was his or her name there and doesn't really do anything to supervise you, those are called gift authorships, which are not ethical, and you can say that it's not, if the supervisor really doesn't supervise you well, then he is not, or she is not entitled for the authorship, but I would say that good supervisors are, and the others in the in the order of their work stakes. And as mentioned before, follow journal instructions also in this issue. Then where to publish? You select publication channel based on the audiences you want to reach, and what papers, journals do they read, and also on the basis of journal focus, because usually journals are, especially peer-reviewed journals, are pretty strict on what they publish. At their home pages, they inform about what is their focus, what is this journal focus, and your manuscript should correspond to that focus. If not, then go and find another journal which focus is in line with your paper. To say also about the publication channel in here, that note that some and actually pretty many peer-reviewed journals take fees that can be over thousands of years. Over 1,000 of years, 2,000 years is pretty normal for publishing your paper open access, or some even if they publish it not open access take some fees. So really consider carefully where to publish. Then consider if it's if you want to publish scientific or professional article. Publishing in a peer-reviewed journal is a long process. That process can take even up to years to publish one paper, and there are rigorous demands on publishing in peer-reviewed journals. So maybe if you at your IO at your bachelor level and you want to publish your thesis results, also professional papers could come into question. Scientific papers are academically more valued, but also you must take into account the resources needed and the competence needed for publishing in peer-reviewed journals. I don't say that at the bachelor level you shouldn't publish on peer-reviewed journals, especially if you are writing with your professors. That's more than possible. We have good experiences on that. But for doing that, I would say that you need your professors to help you. Okay, different types of publications. There are lots of Congress abstract, meaning that you send an abstract to a Congress or conference, and those are published in an abstract book. Short communications papers are also Congress publications, a little bit longer than abstracts, 2-3 pages, but not quite article long ones. Congress proceedings, also a bit same kind as short communications papers. Few page articles on this kind of Congress proceedings books, which some congresses publish after the Congress. There are also research institutes and universities or of applied sciences research report series that either can be peer-reviewed or not, usually not. There you can publish your report. Professional non-peer-reviewed journals, which are targeted for professional audiences, and then scientific peer-reviewed journals. In recognizing scientific merits, these are rated differently, but that is one point to consider. But also consider where do you want to make change. Consider your target group when selecting type of publication and actual publication channel. The word peer-reviewed came up in the previous slides. Peer-reviewed means scientific journal, meaning that your work will be assessed by at least 2 persons with research competencies that who then give their comments on your paper, of course, in addition to the editor-in-chief. And there might also be topical editors on the journal. If you submit to peer-reviewed journal, your article must fulfill criteria of sound scientific research. And when the manuscript arrives to the journal, the editor-in-chief or subtopic editor assigns your paper to two persons with researcher competence, blinded, and they assess your paper and give their comments to you, and the decisions might be that they accept your paper as such. This is very rare. I actually haven't seen that to happen. Usually there are at least minor revisions to be made, after which the editor-in-chief can make the decision if the revisions are made, or then the decision can also be that the article is accepted with major revisions and then goes again to reviewers, and there might be even several revision rounds that you make revisions and then the reviewers again suggest something. I have seen even 3 revisions round, after which the article has been accepted for publication. And thereby, because it's usually 30 to 60 days to make the revisions, and then it again takes 30 to 60 days, depending on the journal, the reviewers to check your article again. So if there will be several revision rounds, it can take even over a year to get your article published. And to say that it's never sure that even if your article is taken into the journal, it doesn't mean that it really will be published. It will be published if you can satisfactorily do the revisions suggested, and your article will be improved in a way that it is the quality is enough to be published in that journal. Let's talk about professional article features of it. The title of a professional article should be very informative and short, briefly to tell what's inside the article. Usually there is also an ingress, a short abstract telling with a few lines the central contents of professional article. If you are reporting about some development process, project or best practices, the best way of doing that is to proceed in logical order from the perspective of phenomenon in question. Also, chronological order of proceeding in the project is a good choice. Also, when you put subtitles, you should follow this rule. Subtitles are always good and informative so that the reader can clearly see with one side what this article is all about and how it proceeds. A good professional article is not an abbreviation of thesis report, but the text must be edited to serve professional communication. In a professional article, you bring up more about the importance of the topic and what has been achieved and what its clinical or meaning or meaning in practice. At the end of the article, summarize the key points of your message with a few sentences as a kind of conclusion of your text. Avoid long sentences, chapters, and terms, both in professional writing as well as in scientific one. Simple is beautiful. Use clear, professional, and descriptive language. Avoid everyday spoken language in expressions, both in professional and scientific articles. So use professional, show that you are a professional, and you can write proper English language. Often in the author's instructions of journals, the structure of the article is given, but if not, in professional article, the introduction can comprise 10%, describing key phenomena, 40%, emphasis on discussion, about 45% of the length of the article, and conclusions 5%. What is given usually, if some rules are given in professional journal, is the length of the article, and you should rigorously follow that character amount or word count that is allowed for, because I have a practical experience that I submitted an article and there was 2 characters too much, and they returned me the paper that please take off these 2 characters. So you really should obey the rules, or your paper will be returned to you. Then let's speak about the structure of scientific article. We speak about I, am, or D structure. I meaning introduction, M methods or results, D discussion. And whatever type of article there is in question, scientific article structure in all journals obey in principle this very same structure. There are no deviations. These chapters might be nominated a bit differently. For example, introduction can be called background. Methods can be called materials and methods, or in case of systematic reviews, review protocol, or yes. Yeah, results are typically results always, and discuss, and then there can be such additional chapters, main chapters as conclusions. They can be as a separate main chapter, or then to be included into discussion. And acknowledgements can be added in some journals. But the basic structure of a scientific article follows always IMRD structure. Introduction, or in the introduction you describe the phenomenon, what is previously known about this topic, if there are some theories or related to the phenomenon, and you should define the central concepts of your works over there. At the end of introduction or background, whatever the journal calls it, purpose, aims, and research questions are defined. Also in the introduction there, you should justify for your study, why it was important that this study was made. Yeah, then into methods chapter, all the methodological stuff will be coming: design, sampling, data collection method, instrument analysis methods, and so on and so on. Of course, in results chapter, you describe your results, and note that there will be no discussions or speculations in the results chapter. Only you report there only things, issues stemming from your data. Whatever data, if you have qualitative or quantitative one, you report your data, but you don't put your own ideas or thoughts there. You only tell in your results what does your data speaks. I will be describing in the upcoming slides some special features of qualitative and quantitative studies, as well as systematic reviews. So I'm not talking about them in here. One more thing, remember that you should be absolutely objective in reporting your results. Of course, in qualitative reporting is always subjectivity, but what brings in objectivity in qualitative reporting is that you openly describe your own parts and own aspects on your own position in related to your data, so that the validity and reliability of your reporting can be, the reader can kind of understand and knows what your position in reporting, and that brings your reporting reliability and validity. Then discussion chapter, one part of it will be discussing validity and reliability issues of your process, and the other main one will be discussing your results against your theoretical background. There can be some sub-chapters. Also, ethical aspects of your study should be discussed here. And into discussion, you can put your own thoughts and kind of wonder there why maybe your results were alike or different to previous studies and why they may do, or of course rather they argumented by some previous data and evidence that makes your discussion more kind of argumented and grounded and scientifically valid. Okay, let's, as told already, some journals may also ask for short conclusions chapter where you conclude what new did your study produce, or what can you say about the phenomenon in question based on your studies, and what maybe should be changed based on your study, and if your study confirms or is in opposite of previous good practice. In some journals, they, especially healthcare journals, they can also ask for some clinical implications. And into clinical implications, you write simply what follows up out of your results for the clinical practice, and for example, what should be changed in clinical practice of that specific healthcare area. Can be also some other, for example, health technology practice implications. Based on my results, what should be changed? A bit same kind of things as conclusions, but focused on the change in practice on that journal's particular area. Then we'll go into specific features of reporting the studies made by different approaches. It would take a day to go very in detail all the features, but here just some general features what should be taken into account, especially in reporting studies made with certain methodological approaches. In quantitative studies, the language is usually passive or third person, thereby the author objectives oneself from the text and gives the impression of being objective. And of course, you should also be objectives in reality. Reporting numerical data very accurately and specifically. Tables and figures are used, and you usually report statistical significances if you have used such in your study. Usually you use them. Usually that is actually a demand in scholar peer-reviewed journals, that you have really done something proper statistical report, statistical significances over there. In the results chapter, just what the numerical data tells, no speculations, like in any reporting. Here one example of a quantitative article by myself. Kranros was my former name, we studied factors associated with core commitment of radiography department staff in organizational change, and here you can see the typical quantitative study abstract. This is a structured abstract where in the abstract purpose is defined, and at the end the aim of the study. Then methods are reported with a few sentences, results and conclusions. This is really a typical structure for a quantitative study abstract. To tell at this point that abstracts of scientific journals can either be structured like this or not structured like open, but the order of presenting things is still the same, even though you don't write their purpose methods. Write out these IMRD structure. Still, also the abstract is presented in IMRD structure format. Here you can see a very typical way of reporting quantitative studies. When you look at table 1, you can see the percentage of those radiography department staff who strongly agree or agree with the statements. And also p-values are reported. If you look at the text explaining or writing out the table 1, the text describing the table is very rigorous, keeping in the facts coming out of the numbers. Nothing, no interpretation, no own ideas, just telling facts coming out of the numbers. Special features of reporting qualitative studies. Good quality qualitative study reports the position of the researcher in relation to study subject in the very beginning of the research report. In good quality report, all the stages of the research process may be seen. This applies also to quantitative study report, good quality quantitative study report. Very typical way of verifying results is using authentic citations. Describing categories and their association with figures or tables is also used. The qualitative study uses reflective reporting of data versus comparing it to theoretical frame of the study. In the next slide, you can see some examples of this. This was our own recently reported qualitative study where our aim was to produce information about factors related to successful and unsuccessful breast cancer care pathways from healthcare staff perspective. Again, you can see here the typical IMRD structure in the abstract, though this is now a qualitative study. Here the subtitles of the abstracts are objectives, results, objectives, materials and methods, results and conclusions. A little bit different than in the quantitative article we previously reviewed. Why these are a bit different doesn't depend on whether this is a qualitative or quantitative study, but from the journal. Different journals have different, a bit different kinds of instructions on how they want their abstracts or the whole article to be structured. This journal, as you can see, was European Journal of Breast Health. As mentioned before, qualitative study often use authentic citations to validate the study findings. Here you can see one. Authentic citations simply means authentic quotations of the data to validate some categories, for example. And here below you can see a typical way of illustrating and describing results, which are then explained on the article text. Over here you can see the reference to that particular table, table 1, and here in the table the categories in question are explained, and in the text more kind of writing out. If you wish to see the text more and its relation to the table more in detail, you can just stop the video for a while and inspect this slide more in detail. Then one more type of scientific article reporting systematic reviews, comprising scoping reviews, systematized reviews, or integrative one. The main difference in reporting qualitative and quantitative studies is that instead of materials and methods chapter, often the chapter is nominated as review strategy. It also can be materials and methods, again, depending on that particular journal and its author's instructions. But whatever it is nominated, what this chapter in case of systematic review should comprise will be the review protocol and search process described with Prisma diagram, quality assessment methods and results, analysis methods of results parts of the selected articles, and if levels of evidence of the articles are assessed, then of course that one, but otherwise the article follows reporting qualitative and quantitative studies. Here again one example of reporting a scoping review published a couple of years ago. Again, here if we inspect the structure of the abstract, introduction, methods, results, and conclusions, and implications for practice for this particular journal. What kind of meaning do these findings have for clinical practice or education? Here, a typical way of reporting the search process. I think that most, almost all scientific journals want search process of systematic reviews to be described with this kind of prisma diagram. Then overall, some practical advice, mostly learned in practice for writing scientific articles, to emphasize once again that please read and follow all the instructions of the journal you select. And it's a question of taste, but what I suggest is that you leave writing the abstract last, because you seldomly know what your text looks like in the beginning of authoring process. Abstract is very very tight description of what the article is all about, and that you don't know in the beginning. And what I've noticed is that preparing introduction takes surprisingly lots of time, because and I think it is almost the most difficult part of the article, because there you should have all in a couple of pages all the essential knowledge, what is known before about this phenomenon, and you should dig out the most relevant and newest references and research studies, previous research studies about the topic. So also the structure of the introduction is really important, and often you need to write it a couple of times again, several times again. And in the articles, especially when we start authoring, and even as a senior, authoring and writing articles is a learning curve and learning process, but there are some flaws that can be forgiven when you submit your articles for the editor and editorial process, and that the kind that can be asked you to correct, and some that are never forgiven you if the article comprises that kind of flaws. Forgiven ones are minor linguistic errors. If the language is not totally bad, you shouldn't send to a journal with not good academic English. If English is not your native language, please find some native speaker to edit your text, or use some professional to do that. Sorry for spelling mistake, just spoke about bad English language. Layout issues are the kinds that editor-in-chief reading your text through may advise you to correct, and they usually don't even take your manuscript into the journal before you have corrected the layout issues, but they are forgiven. They are just the editor just sends your manuscript back and asks you to correct, and then it's it might be taken to journal. But if some plagiarism is detected, if there are major errors in the study design or methodology, or really bad academic English, usually, or I would say always, you get your article back and they said that this is not publishable. And then the best advice is just to start depending on the error, if it's a major design error, you just need to do your study again. It is not publishable. Of course, plagiarism, you never should. You also lose your reputation on the scientific field. So please never do that. You do so much harm for yourself. To some practical advice, where to start. If you are wondering that, I would say that start from your research focus, purpose, aims, and objectives, and then plan what your introduction should comprise, what are your methods, and after you have your results, then write your results. Last, discuss and abstract that. That is, at least on my experience, a good order of authoring. As told before, that please take care, especially if you are a junior author, that you have somebody experienced to back you up and to help you, and listen listen well what you are told and advised, and do the revisions according to the senior author's comments. Test the understandability of text, letting someone who doesn't know the substance of your article. Husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, mothers, children are good for that purpose. The kind that don't know anything about your topic, if they understand your text, then it's pretty obvious that it is readable. Be ethical in authorships. Give the credit to whom it belongs. And also be ethical in all the stages of your research process. Then quickly a few words about publishing process. Make rigorously all the referees ask for. If you disagree with some revisions, that can happen and often happens. Argument carefully. Why did you feel that you were not able to do these revisions? By the way, since there are at least these two reviewers, their comments can sometimes be conflicting. And then just decide which comment are you going to follow. If you don't know, ask some of your colleagues or supervisor which you should follow and argument again. Use comments to reviewers letter. There are forms for that. If not, create one. And like already told before, please use professional translators or editors or the native language. Native speakers to check out your language before, unless you are by yourself native speaker, in order not to be rejected because of the bad language. Here just some examples how to respond to reviewer comments. You can divide it, the comments by yourself into parts, and then please respond each comment rigorously. If you want to look this one more in detail, please stop the video and just check out. But this is just a slide to show how in practice you should respond to review. Thank you for your attention.